And for those of you that are new to us, a lot of people often look at these banners and say, oh, what are these symbols then? Now, some are obviously sun, moon, but other ones are crop circles, if you didn't guess. And they record these shapes that have been appearing over the years. And we always look at the shapes. We always we get very excited about seeing them from above, and we forget to consider the way they're made inside and the incredible detail that you find inside them. And this man here, Dan Vidler, is somebody that's specialized in that. He's actually brought people's attention to that. And his new book, Layers of Mystery, which I literally have seen in the last 1 hour, it is amazing. I'd already seen a rough of it and was very, very honored to write a little piece at the beginning of it, because this is something that hasn't really been recorded properly before. And I'm really excited that somebody is doing this work. So we're going to hear a lot more about the layers of mystery with crop circles. So a big hand, please, for Dan Vidler.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't mind if a slide appeared on there in a minute, and then I'll talk about it. I'm going to talk with you this afternoon for an hour about crop circles. It's in this arena. I'm just filling time now, by the way. In this arena, that is what I'm all about. Crop circles, ground details, things that are seen when we visit crop circles, when we walk into them. So I'm going to try and talk to you. There it is. Who doesn't love a new crop circle book? We go into crop circles, and when you look around inside a crop circle, hopefully a lot of you have been in crop circles, perhaps even on the tour yesterday. Was that yesterday? The day before, Thursday.
Is that
and my interest in this goes back 22 years, and it goes back a bit longer than that. I'm going to try and tell you the story of one, how I got into it, and two, then what I've seen since. But my take on it is that the details that you see inside crop circles are just as amazing, just as mind-blowing as the aerial image shows, just as mind-blowing as the geometry that people investigate and draw and share with us. So I'm hoping that by the end of this, you'll sort of get a bit more of an insight into what I've been doing for the last 22 years in investigating this on the ground, on my hands and knees. Obviously, I'm going to be recommending that you buy the book. Of course, that's part of it. So hopefully I'll give you like a bit of a taster of what the book is. It's my life's work. It's my journey within the crop circles. And there are a couple of different parts to it, so I'll go into it now. And I've got to talk about Andy a lot, right? He's really fundamental to my life in this. I think he's just walked out the back door, but I'm just going to go on. I'm going to go on with it. Because I believe my journey in crop circles started in 1995, even though he's back. Even though I didn't go into a crop circle until 2003, so I'm going to try and be quick, because I've got a lot of slides, a lot of things I want to show you. But in 95, Andy and his team, there were a group of people. Might have been Jason, probably. I'm looking for you, Jason, but I don't know you. But Paul Burer, Karen, Alexander, conducted some work, some meditation. It's a complicated and amazing story, which I'm not going to try and tell you now. I'm not going to go into that at all. It's not mine to tell. But if you haven't ever read Quest for Contact, it's amazing. It tells you the in-depth story of this communication experiment, if you like. And where do I come into this? I was 16 at that time. I don't know if I'd heard about crop circles or not, probably, but I hadn't really had any thought on them yet. I believe that this is the start of it for me, because what happened in 1995 with Andy and that group was that all of the work they did culminated in, as is obvious from the front cover, culminated in this crop circle. And here's where I sort of feel like I became involved in it, because that crop circle appeared. I'm going to skip a couple. I'm going to skip forward. I'm going to skip back. Appeared here in Felbridge. Okay, so Part of what the work that they did was next to Wolstonbury Hill, which is Sussex, which is about 20 or so miles south. And then the crop circle that appears on the front cover of the book appeared here in Felbridge. And this, I didn't know this had happened at the time, but what I did know was that Felbridge is the village where I grew up. I'd grown up there since the age of 1. And so the crop circle that appeared as a result of Andy's, Karen's, the rest of their team's work was really, really near to my house. Little did I know. It appeared here, and I think that's my house here. I can't remember yeah, that's my house. And every day, I said I'd keep the story brief, so I'm going to get on with it now. But every day of 1995, I cycled from my house here up this track. It's not really a road, like a byway, up this track here, and then I cycled along here to go fishing in a pond that's just over there. So what I believe is that every day I was cycling past the crop circle, didn't know it was there, but the energy that had come from near Wolstonbury Hill, from Andy's experiment, Andy's group, that had resulted in this crop circle is this, actually it's I think this black line here, which I've tracked across the Google Maps. So I was crossing over that energy over and over again, the whole of that summer without realizing it. And that, I believe, is basically why I'm standing up here talking to you now. It's amazing. When I found out that that was where that was, after meeting Andy, I've sort of done this in reverse, but I'm going in chronological order. If you know this book, which was, I think, published last summer, who doesn't love a new crop circle book? I've asked it once, I'm going to ask it again. This was last summer's. I don't think this is the actual crop circle, but this is the farmer from Felbridge, Farmer Emmett, who I did know at the time, standing in a crop circle in Felbridge, and there it appeared on the front cover of Michael Green's book published last summer. So this is the true start of the journey for me, and a journey that is, I'm going to hopefully show you that some of what we're talking about here, yes, there's ground details in crop circles, and that's my focus, and that's my work, that's my research over 20 years. But actually, what I've come to learn is that space and time don't really seem to be relevant within this world, and there's some evidence to that, and this is part of it, I think. I'm going to skip forward to 2003. Still part of the background, but here's where Andy comes in for the second time, right? I went to it was the relaunch of Andy's book, Vital Signs, and again, a bit like Quest for Contact, I'm going to highly, highly recommend it. You can't do better than Vital Signs if you want an overview of the crop circle phenomenon. It's everything, just tells you everything you need to know. I went to I think Andy was, perhaps you'll correct me, Andy, if this is wrong, but publishing a second edition of the book, and I went to the launch of that in Brighton. Met Andy really briefly there, but we had set eyes on each other. And then skip forward a couple of months, can't tell you exactly when that was, skip forward a couple of months, and on the local radio in Brighton, whatever station that would have been, it was announced, and you believe this if you will, because it wouldn't happen these days, I don't think. Local radio station announced the arrival of a crop circle just outside Brighton, which was this. Just near Falmouth, Woodingdean, on the local radio, and I'd heard a bit about this, but they're two in the same field, in fact. This was a week before. I hadn't heard about that one, but did hear about this one. So Polly, my wife, and I drove off the edge of the photo. Her aunt lives over here somewhere, so we're just going there to see her. Drove along this road here, which is quite a fast road. And again, this is here again comes in Andy. I glance out the window, and in the lay-by, that's probably somewhere just down here, or it could be here, can't remember. I see Andy Thomas, our very own Andy Thomas, getting whatever gear he takes into crop circles ready to walk into that crop circle with Alan Brown, who I didn't know at the time. When you make a quick decision, but it's a turning point in your whole life. The decision was 1 second long, but it went like this. I know Andy Thomas is going to have permission to go into that field, and if I stop the car and go in there quick enough, I can go in with him, and that will be my first crop circle. Amazing. Which is what I did. So Andy appeared. If I'd have been 1 minute later, he'd have been walking off up the tram lines, and I wouldn't have seen him. Would I have gone in a crop circle ever in my life if that hadn't happened? I don't know. Maybe not. But it did happen. And Andy is integral to this journey. That's a serious point. The 25th of May, 2003. So I ran up into the field. I'm not going to tell you much about this, but there it is, drawn by Barry Reynolds, also a Sussex crop circle researcher, veteran, and sharer of information. I'll give you another quick thing. So that we find these links. We find the link between the location of the sort of key meditation that I think is believed to have led to the formation of this in Felbridge there. Then if we draw a line from there, from that formation, 1995, and we go to the location of this one, very different time. This is 8 years later, of course, but there are some significant things going on here. West Hoathly is where my best friend, Ben Coleman, lived, and I spent all my time there, and we spent a lot of our time skateboarding, if you can see it, skateboarding up and down that path. And so that would have been in 1995 and 6 and 7, around that same time. But I can't get away from that link, and again, I'm trying to demonstrate that time, the year that we are in, is not relevant to this situation. I believe that energy linking the crop circle at Felbridge and the crop circle at Falmer, which then became my first one, so my home village, Andy Thomas, Falmer, 2003, that I also believe that energy was in motion at this point while I was skateboarding up and down Finch's Field car park. So I got a double dose. I think I'll show you a couple more slides here. Look, there it is. There we are. Right, so after this, Falmer, 25th of May, which I'm not going to laser anyone, but if you look just there, over there, it's on the wall. So it's always nice whenever I come to the symposium that I get to see that presented to us as my very first crop circle that I joined Andy in by chance. 1 week later, listening to the local radio, and another crop circle was announced, which happened to be just pretty close by, a few miles away at Sompting, popular area for crop circles in those days, and this is what it looked like. I should give Andrew King a mention. These are his photos. This is before the days of drones and too far away for Steve Alexander's helicopter. So Andrew King flew over both of these. I went into this on the Sunday morning after hearing on the radio, so conveniently. And then here's where if the entering a crop circle with Andy slamming my foot on the brakes of the car and my wife Polly sitting into the driver's seat and me running into the field is the first moment of revelation. This is the second, because we were walking in here. It's only the second crop circle that I'd been into. Very exciting, so lush, so green. You can see it's green, but really on that day it'd been raining overnight. Like if you've been into a crop circle that's in green, fresh crops, is something else. And walking around it, the perimeter here, this ring on the outside, the stems of the wheat flow clockwise. Okay, so that's, let's say, reasonably standard thing. But what you can't see it anywhere. I've got no photo of it. But this was the second moment of revelation to me. Around the very, very outside perimeter was a single stem's width. It's the only way I can describe it, of stems flowing the opposite way. So rather than flowing clockwise like the other million in the rest of the formation, there was just one single stem's width of stems flowing against that. Right now I find that amazing, still find it amazing. There are other examples of this. Guess where you can read about those. But here's why it was a revelation. I was standing in my second crop circle only, and I'd seen it. I'd just been shown this thing. If I went there now and I crawled around on my hands and knees for half an hour, I might not have seen that again. But I was being shown this. So at that moment, it was that point in time of realizing this is my part in crop circles. I'm being shown something that's so intricate. It's so intricate, and no one's talking about this. And this is for me. Which it then has been 22 years worth of crawling on my hands and knees and looking for exactly those sorts of things. Even in this year, I'll show you. If I make it to the end of this, I'm going to have to go quickly, but in the Normanton Down Stonehenge formation that's like a square with the 4 standing circles, it's not as intricate as the single stem, but there's a counterflow in there, which if you've been there, you perhaps would have seen, that points directly east-west, and it's this work started here, and it was really something. I'm going to speed through onto ground details, but we started the website, which quickly became, this is in 2005, so I'm going forward a little bit. My friend Chris Riley and I started a website, which then has since become our archive of all of this investigation, all of the work, all the research, the many, many, many hours spent crawling around on hands and knees in fields of crops in Sussex, in Wiltshire, in Hampshire, in Dorset. It's important to mention the website because it's pretty simple, but it is a really big archive of ground details, of ground research, and without that, I don't know that I'd have been so driven to investigate the crop circles in the way that I have. I've thrown in another picture of the book here, I don't know what's coming up next, that's genuinely, but it doesn't hurt to give you a reminder. You could buy this at the end. Right, so then I'm going to show you some ground features. Look at that, it's one of the best things we've ever seen. If you were around, it was Windmill Hill 2010, and there was this, I'm not going to show you the whole image of it, but this 6-pointed sort of petaled star, I don't know, flower, sorry, with full of these nests. I'm going to come on to nests, and I'll show you some of these close up, but nothing says ground features like that photo. Look at people staring in awe at what they're seeing on the ground. In starting to put the book together, it's as simple as making a list of all the ground features that I want to write about, okay? And that list gradually grew as I sort of remembered there's finer details that perhaps I haven't talked about for a longer time. So that is literally the contents page. Not going to try and, in the next, 40 minutes more, I'm not going to try and talk with you about all of those because then there's simply not time. It's hours worth. But I'm going to show you a few key features, a selection, could be any, but some of them are my favourite things that I've seen. And why am I showing you that? Because to emphasise the number of different things that you might see. If you've been to visit a few crop circles, if you've been to visit lots, or even if you've been to visit one, you will have seen some of what is on that list in that crop circle. So the point of the book is many things, but one is a guide, so to speak. You could take it with you to a crop circle. This is my aim, genuinely. You could take it to a crop circle and you could look at a thing on the ground, you could look at some woven stems, and you could look in the book and you could sort of make that link and say, oh, okay, this is what I'm looking at. Oh, this was also found in this crop circle in 2018. I'm giving false examples, but that's the point of it. And there's just so much to see that some of which, if you've been to a crop circle, you would have seen it. Some of which you probably wouldn't have. One of the things in here which I'm going to talk about in a bit, I haven't even seen. It's Barry Reynolds' work back in 94. Berlin Gap 94. So starting with bent nodes, if you've heard about them, they are the joints in the stem. The stem grows from the nodes, and they're pretty solid. If you know the thing I'm talking about, they're pretty firm. You can see them in all crops. They just are those joints. What you can't do is, as a human, you can't bend them. You can't make them bend. They're not soft, they're just solid, because that's the growth point. The only way that you could see a bent node is if some stems have been flattened for whatever reason. The crop will grow back towards the sun, a process called phototropism, and it will grow from the node. So naturally, if there were some stems that had been flattened, they would naturally grow back up, so you'd have horizontal and then upright. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about nodes of stems within crop circles that are bent, but they're not bent as a result of the crop trying to recover and grow towards the sun. So just to emphasize, what we're talking about is something that is impossible to make happen. It is not possible to make it happen. Yet, here's an example here's one of the all-time great crop circles, the Phoenix. You must know it, 2009, Yatesbury. And that image is from there. But the Phoenix contained just a sort of a massive array of bent nodes, but they're not bent flat along the ground and then the crop's growing up like phototropism. They're bent sideways. So in some of these areas, and I can't tell you where, crop stems of the barley that's flowing around the corner was bent round the corner by the bending of the node in whole sections. It's an amazing thing. I've included that image because I keep seeing it. This is my picture of it, but people use this image and it's just something, because it's a giant tuft of standing barley with all the other stems just flowing around. I like it, so I'm showing it to you. Still with the bent nodes, right? You'll know this formation, 777. If you've ever heard of Gary King, heard him speak, you'll know that. And I'm not going to tell you the complex story of this, but it's also amazing. He was on top of Knapp Hill. There was some filming with night vision cameras. This enormous, enormous formation appeared within a really short time frame. It would appear that it happened very, very, very quickly. But the hours of darkness were three and a half, I think, at the most. So, size aside, amazing story, and 777 filming. Win Keach was the filmmaker, I think, that Gary King was with. It was also full of bent nodes, and these, just to be sure that you know what I'm talking about, these are not along the ground and growing back up. This photo was actually taken quite deep underneath layers and layers and layers of flattened stems. So once you dug a bit deeper, gently as you can, we find these features that are nothing to do with stems growing up towards the sun. They're just part of the formation of that crop circle. Here's another nice one that's from the same place. So just right in the depths of that enormous, that 1,000-foot plus formation that appeared within, I'm going to say, three and a half hours. There are, and this is where I'm coming back to that magic, there are magical things in there. There's features that are this big, that are just as incredible as the story, just as incredible as the overall design, and just as impossible to create. I'm going to move on to something else. I'm also going to say, maybe I should have started with this. Just to be clear from now, and maybe I should have said from the outset, I do not think people go around with a plank of wood and just stomp around. If that's not coming, I'm not even saying it as a joke, if that's not coming across clearly, like, I think some people make some crop circles. Some. But I don't believe that most of these features can be created. I don't believe most crop circles are made by people, and I'll put that out there now. But I sort of hope that some of the evidence in the book, or that I'm showing you here, reflects that belief. Right, the basket weave. It's not uncommon. It's not that common. Don't think we've seen it this year, Roland? Not yet this year. But it's a pretty nice thing. I'm going to try and demonstrate with my hands. It's where, if this isn't obvious, it's a band of stems, perhaps not quite a meter wide, can vary. Flattened one way, and then the overlap. And this goes on and on. In this lovely, amazing formation at Hackpen Hill in 2012, This is from that, and it was a particularly amazing example of that layering. There's stems flowing underneath here, but then the stems right next to them here are flowing on the top. So this goes over, but it also is under, and then this bit's over as well. It can't happen. Can't happen. It's got to just all happen at the same time. You can't make an order out of it. Very often you can't work out what came first and next. It's not chronological. I'm trying to be quick because I've got loads left here. Standing tufts. I would say there's a rare crop circle where you don't find standing tufts. Normanton down, Stonehenge, the square. From this year, you don't find standing tufts because there's no centre anywhere. But they're pretty common. If you've been to a few crop circles, you'd have seen a standing tuft. They vary. There's that big bunch that I showed you earlier. There's some that are 100 stems. There's sometimes it's one stem. And these appear in small formations. They appear in big formations. This particular example here was in this White Sheet Hill, 2010. And if you, each alternate circle here are those features, those standing tufts. It was an amazing thing, and of course there's no pathway into each of these. There's a good bit of standing crop in between. Oh, here's another nice one, and that is in this amazing, also 2012 actually, this amazing, weird and wonderful creation that I love in these rings, again with an unbroken ring of standing crop, but also in some of those circles on the end. So I'm going to keep on going, but that is standing tufts. If you've seen them, you know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, hopefully you're getting that impression from what I'm showing you here. Here's one of my favourite things, the counterflow, right? So I've talked about the single stem around the outside of the circle at something that sort of got me into, this is the thing for me, looking at ground details. But it doesn't have to be a single stem. That's a rare example. But what you do often have, this is also a rare example, but I'm going to talk about it, it illustrates it quite nicely. What you often do have is a strip, let's say, of any width of stems that flow one way, clockwise or anti-clockwise. It's pretty much the two options. Adjacent to it might be a band of stems that are flowing the opposite way. So if that is a simple explanation, hopefully it makes sense. This is at Green Street, just near Avebury, and these sort of amazing rainbow stripes are created by pathways about 6 to 8 inches wide, which are here, perhaps a little bit wider, alternately flowing clockwise and anti-clockwise to form these curves. The reason I love this type of feature is partly because if people go into crop circles and there is this counterflow going on, you might hear talk of it being messy, and you might agree or you might not, but it looks a little bit messy. And what happens is that I'm going to have to show it to you with my hands, it's the only way. If all the stems are laid at the same time, they're all flattened at the same time with whatever energy causes that, if they're flowing the opposite way, they get stuck here. So the middle, where they meet, they're sort of lodged together, which means they can't get flat, whereas the ones further away can. So these strips here are where stems have had to have been flattened at the same time and then got caught up. So if you imagine that on the scale of this, every one of those strips you see is where the stems are flattened at the same time. So this means, to me it's just a fact, that every stem in this entire flattened area was flattened at exactly the same time. There's no chronological process to it, it just happened. That's why I like it. But people think it looks messy, which I sort of also quite like. Layers. Wherever you go, you're going to find layers of stems as long as it's not just a single circle, and even then you can find it. Stems flowing one way, meat stems flowing another way. They've got to go over or under. In the simplest form, stems flowing one way, in a central circle perhaps, are overlapped by stems joining that central circle. So here's the central circle, that's flattened, and then the stems coming into it will lay over the edge. So it's simple, that's a layer. And then the more complex situations, not always more complex crop circles, but in this case it is, you often have more than one layer. So this is just a lovely example. It's such an intricate one. I'm just going to show you where it was here at Smooth Plantation. Can't tell you a year on that one, but so just in case it's not clear from the image, we probably start over here on the bottom, stems flowing this way. Then we've got left to right, as the picture is, flowing across. Then some more from top to bottom. Then some more left to right. And then some more over the top. So we're talking about not a huge number of stems in this example, but the intricacy of 6 layers. And then I'll draw your attention to, if the image shows it clearly enough, the condition of these stems. They're not squashed, crushed down, all embedded into the ground. They're just perfect. They're perfectly gently laid in 6 layers. In amongst, and this is, again, I'll emphasize this point, but in amongst this, it's not a simple thing, but there they were. It's something. I've got loads of pictures of the next feature, right, so I'll just show you them because they're amazing. The standing center, if you think back to last season, I think there were 5 crop circles, perhaps this isn't one of those, this is 2016 at Clay Hill, where there are standing stems in the middle of a circle. It's as simple as that. So without need for lots of explanation, you can't walk into the middle of that circle without making a path, which I'll show you. Actually, this is neat. This is neat. Look, here's one from Normanton down this year, 2024. These circles are formed without a path going into the middle. Yes, there's a bit of damage here now from visitors, but there's no pathway into that. If you do walk through the standing crop, don't do this. This is what happens. So it's a perfect illustration of why these crop circles don't have a center. No one's walked into the middle. No one's done it with a rope and a plank, really, have they? Look, you like this one, Ringmer, 2005. It's a rare photo. I don't know if Piers is in the room, but he might live there because he says north of Lewis, and I think that's about where Ringmer is. What a beauty. Oilseed rape, no centre. Oh, this is Lewis as well. Just the standing centre, you can't walk in it. I've got more. This is a favourite. So you'll know about this one, the Beltane wheel. First thing in the morning. Can anyone give me a year on that? It's way before my time. Come on. A film crew. I'm relaying stories that I was not involved with, but I know this stuff from reading Andy's books, probably. By halfway through the morning, that had turned to that because a film crew had tried to walk into the middle to do some filming. You'll read about this in more detail. That's what happens when you walk into the middle of the standing crop. It ruins it. It's just a fact. This is from last year, 2023, Scratchbury Hill. Not that far away from here, 45 minutes or so. Another lovely standing centre, and then I go on, but this amazing thing where, yes, this crop is drilled slightly wider apart, but you still can't walk into the middle of these, and there are loads and loads and loads of them. That's one of my boys. There it is. That's Steve's image of it. And just to emphasise this, if you haven't seen enough standing centres, we're up to 2024. And I would argue that even this circle, yeah, you could stand right next to it, but the very centre I don't believe to be in the tram line, so it is very, very neatly placed. Barry Reynolds has shared a lot of information with me. He does a lot of work with alignments, which is part 2 of this, which I'll come on to. I know I've talked alignments with Felbridge, Falmer, Finch's Field, skateboarding. But this happened in 1994, so this is actually even before my crossing over the line of energy that created the Felbridge crop circle time. Barry shared this. Andy was involved in this. Michael Green was there. But it's a very, very rare example at a place called Burling Gap in East Sussex. And the stems in the crop circle, I haven't got an image of the actual circle, but were bent. This is a good bit off the ground. Bent twice, here, and then back down towards the ground throughout the whole formation. So rare. I haven't seen anything like it as a whole spread. I believe it to be a one-off, certainly from what's been visited. And Barry talks about these, what he describes as nests. I'm going to describe something else as nests, but almost a spider's web of crisscross stems, where none of the stems were bent at the ground. So the visitors, that team, describe sort of walking across and every single step having to lift the feet up, but then the feet going straight through the middle of this onto the ground. It's really unique. In the book, I don't joke promoting it, but in the book, Barry's report is there, which tells you about it in more detail. It's pretty amazing. Right, back to this and nests. They're a pretty nice feature, and we haven't seen them for a little while, I don't think, not to this scale anyway. Essentially, it's a 3D structure, stems that are woven to create a structure, knotted, and are raised off the ground. You can see it there, you can see it here. This is all in that same formation at Windmill Hill. They're bent not flat to the ground, not stepped on, but these are so it's hard to describe, but they're so solidly woven that if you were to try to pull them apart, it's really pretty hard to do it. You could do it, they'd all just break up. But it's a really strong 3D structure that forms these, and they don't all look the same. We have this same sort of effect around the outside, but with this lovely bunch of stems standing in the middle, some sort of knotting in between. Others look more like this, where you have sort of bunches of stems. Perhaps they're twisted, perhaps they're knotted, perhaps they're sort of woven underneath one another. The seed heads here, I think, come from this. I think they're over and then round. But it's pretty good. I'm going to go on. Cross-hatching. So you'll know this image. It's the iconic Clay Hill 2010 photographed by Steve Alexander. And just to really illustrate what we're talking about with cross-hatching, flattened crop, appearing white if we're talking about silhouette, standing crop, black, but here we have, excuse me, here we have, and it's the first time this had ever been seen in 2010, here we have a grey image, a third tone to what would be a silhouette, and it's created with cross-hatching, so that is like you would with a pencil, some lines one way, some lines perpendicular, to create a greying effect. This is what it looked like on the ground. It's quite difficult to photograph in an accurate way, but lots of stems in narrow pathways going one way, overlapped by others going the other way, and in between, little tufts of standing stems that create that grey image. Here's same thing, but closer up. It's not really very uniform in there. It's everywhere, but it's amazing. So 2010, cross-hatching number 1. 2020, Stanton in Wiltshire, and cross-hatching number 2. This was a little bit after it had appeared, so wasn't in quite such good condition at this point. So that looks more like just lines. Actually, when it first appeared, this is my image of it. You can see that it's a lot more gentle and a lot more hatched. Here's what it looked like on the ground. So a really very, very fluid movement to the stems, crisscrossing, and then of course these standing tufts are what's left over, creating that like amazing 3D image. I'm going to show you this one, which I believe to be one of the rarest things ever seen. I didn't go into it. wish I had. I didn't realize the significance of it at the time. This is obviously standing. This one is flattened. This is cross-hatched, like at Clay Hill, like at Stanton. This is not cross-hatched, it's just hatched. So that's just very narrow parallel lines covering this, because actually this is a very, very rare example, I believe, of a fourth tone. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 different tones. It's a cool thing. It's at Longwood, Warren, Hampshire. I've got a case study for you. I think it's the most unique. I just said that about. Did I say that about the other one? This is the most unique of all time. This is the most unique of all time. 2005 at Marden, and I heard talk of something. I can't remember the words. Something unusual. There's something unusual at Marden, or something weird going on at Marden. And I went in there. Little did we know what this actually meant. It's an unbelievable thing because of all this. You can see it. It's like nothing else. It's like nothing else that's ever appeared, ever, as far as I know, in this phenomenon. Here's a close-up from my camera on the pole. What you're looking at is all 3D features. So these sort of they're almost like little rivers. But all of the standing stem, all the stems in between are not standing. They're woven, they're knotted. Some of them are tunnels. Some of them are just sort of piled up to create this unbelievable 3D effect, like mind-blowing when you go into there. And you don't know what to photograph next or where to step. It's incredible. I'm going to try and show you a few of the features of this. So this is one, a bit like the nest that I showed you earlier, where this knotting happens and then the stems are pushed back through underneath. You had these sort of tunnels created with stems knotted, woven across the top. This goes on and on and on back here. But then underneath, you've still got some flattened stems that flow through, just like a tunnel. It's an incredible thing. This is, I'll just skip forward and back, this sort of central standing tuft feature, if you like, but really quite different to the average one because the image doesn't show it brilliantly. The stems were swept really, really gently up rather than flat and then standing, just sort of spiraling up towards the top of that. Probably see it better from this, but there's a lot of stems in there and they're not flat. These aren't flat, they sort of sweep up. Here's another of those little avenues, and again, this is all woven together. It's all really tightly woven. I'll go on. That one's a good 8 inches off the ground, but with this very, very small tuft of standing stems in the middle. And there it is in close up. It's an absolutely incredible thing. It was an incredible thing. Hard to document, but like as I'm saying, completely unique. So that's a selection of ground features. However many I've shown you there, it's what, 5 or 6. So there's 36, I believe. If you told me there's one more that I haven't talked about, I believe it. If you told me there were 5 more, fair enough, because you might have seen stuff that I haven't seen. But it's a lot, and I've only covered a few here, just at high speed and in a small amount of detail. So I'm going to move on. My recent research, so the last 4 years, perhaps 5, I think 4, has, as well as ground details, I've started to look at alignments across the landscape. So what we know is that crop circles historically have appeared near ancient sites, near sacred places, and we acknowledge that, and we know that they're linked. We've seen it for a long time. People have researched that. Where my work in this area is slightly different is that I believe that there are features within the crop circles themselves, not just the position in the landscape being adjacent to a round barrow, but features within the crop circles themselves, or sometimes in the designs, that point to places. They align with sacred sites, sometimes really far away across the landscape, but also they align with other crop circles. And if you remember at the beginning I was talking about time not being a relevant factor in this, I'm going to try and illustrate what I mean. With these alignments, I don't believe time is part of it. It all exists at the same time. So I'm going to try and illustrate that for you now. This is 2022 at Little Horton. The two lines show two alignments that became apparent immediately from this. One is the centres of the circles, that's red, points over here. This yellow is the tram line. So I haven't got time to go into details about this. Tram lines play a really important part in the alignment, sometimes in the way that the crop circles are positioned, but certainly in alignments in more than one example. So we see from here two alignments. If you know your Wiltshire landscape, you know that that's Etchelhampton Hill in the background. So excitingly, because we know that that's a very frequently visited area for crop circles, and I shouldn't say this out loud, but reasonably often farmers are friendly enough to let people in, so I wouldn't want to speak too soon. But we're excited by this because we noticed that these two lines point to Etchelhampton Hill, which is here, and these fields are, let's say, reasonably frequently visited by the crop circles, certainly within our sort of previous 5-year time frame, and this one here, which I'll come to in a minute. So a few of us had a bit of discussion about this, and I was excited in the fact that it seemed like this Little Horton formation, which was directing our attention, let's say, towards Etchelhampton Hill. So perhaps, and I don't mean like watch overnight and film it. I can't do that. It's not something I've got time for. But to keep an eye on that area, or to at least have an expectation that we might see something in that area. So when we heard, there we are again. I heard news of Etchelhampton Hill and a new formation appearing there, and then perhaps slightly disappointingly, I'm going to skip back a couple of slides. Slightly disappointingly, that formation that I've just showed you appeared just here on the edge of Monument Hill. It's still in the Etchelhampton area, but it wasn't in one of these fields that we were I had my fingers crossed that we might get something there. However, it's sort of a compass point or an arrow or a chevron, whatever way you want to look at it, is pointing somewhere. I'll show you on the next slide where it's pointing. There's two alignments from this. One is the center of the circular elements that are here, and the other is the chevron, if you draw a straight line through the chevron and through the center of this part here. So again, two lines from one crop circle, but we're talking about quite fine details, because actually the chevron here doesn't align with the circles here. But we like to draw lines from crop circles and see where they lead, so that's where I'm going with this. This is all going to happen at once. So here it is. That's too big. It wasn't that big in the landscape, but that's where it is. These two lines point directly across the fields that we were hoping might yield something magical at Etchelhampton Hill. And let's see what happens next. I'm looking at it. I'm just trying to build up to it a little bit. You can see it all in there, can't you? There we are. What happened next was, I should have built this bit up. Every field in Wiltshire, that's an exaggeration, nearly every field in Wiltshire had been harvested at the end of 2022. Literally, it had all happened, except one, and it was this one. And I you just had that feeling, and then I can't tell you the date that this appeared, but this, again, slightly bigger, appeared. Where those white dots are the exact location of the centres of each of these circles. So the revelation was that the chevron, that the Little Horton, the yellow and red lines, highlighted this field, this whole area. Then the Monument Hill chevron, arrow, compass, whatever you want to call it, with its two lines pointed back across. And then later, when this occurred, which was a week later, perhaps two, I can't remember, certainly a good few days, it picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these individual circles. It's not the longest distance, but it's a good few hundred meters, and as soon as you're off by the tiniest amount, those things don't match up. Like, it's pretty amazing. What you're noticing, the eagle-eyed among you, is this, like, half shadow. That's this. But this didn't appear in 2022. That appeared in 2020. So that had been in that field 2 years before. And this, just by lucky chance that you sometimes find a crop circle on Google Maps in it, you know, you don't know, you might look in a certain area and then, oh, look, it was photographed at the right time. This was there 2 years before. And then when you overlay the right size, that's the alignment of this. It's mind-blowingly accurate. So the chevron not only highlighted 5 of the 6 circles in the final, that was the final formation of the year, 2022, but it also goes perfectly through the middle of the crop circle from 2 years before. There it is again, to highlight it. This is it's on another level, because we're talking about transcending time. So we've got 2 different seasons. We've got crop circles appearing more than 2 years apart, that are identifying each other through their alignment across the landscape. There are, I'm going to say, I should know my own book, 7 examples of this, and that's not the most complicated one. That's not the most complex. When you read about them, you'll get that there's more of this going on. That circle there that's been left out by this is picked out by a different formation at Roundway at the end of 2020. So then when you track that forward, you align with this, and you align with something else that's way off the aerial photo. It's amazing stuff. That's a summary of the alignment, right? So now we're going to shift a little bit into how is it all possible, because I can't answer how a crop circle is made. I can't answer it. I just don't think it's a plank and a man or woman in the dark. I just don't think that. I can't answer how this is physically happening. But I've been asked increasingly, if you can't explain how it's physically going on, how the stems are physically flattened, how is it coming about? And it was a few months ago I was trying to discuss this. But I believe, like our previous speaker made strong reference to, I believe in a single universal consciousness that every living thing in the universe is part of. I absolutely agree with him that it's like a fractal. So one person's involvement in that is as powerful as the infinite number that make up that universal consciousness. That's how I view all of this. That's how I view every ground feature that perhaps I'm lucky enough to see, or I don't see it and someone else is lucky enough to see. It's like a gift. 5 minutes? It's like a gift of that moment, that one thing, but because one person has seen it, that's as good as every conscious being in the universe having seen it. That's the power of it. You might think this is weird, but this is my view on it, all right? You know, in Avatar, when they join the hair's got all those strands. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty good. They join together, and there's that bond with the animal or with the tree. I view it like that. But those strands, instead of being however many are in that CGI created image, those strands are infinite, and that's how I imagine that. That's how I imagine those alignments happen. Oh, I was going to talk about the field of stems. That's supposed to be a video, but we'll move on. When you're standing in a crop circle, whether you sense this or not, I just feel like you're at one with, I think you are anyway, with every single stem that's living in that field. There's a finite number of those. Don't know how we'd even estimate it, but you're at one with that. You're at one with that universal, and then So we're involved. We're not stomping around with a plank of wood, but we're inherently involved in the creation with our conscious being. I'm running out of time, so I'll just show you a few shots from Normanton Down. Here we are. It's a lovely thing. I wouldn't mind knowing if anyone's been up there. Put your hands up and I'll see. Okay. 2. Right. If it's still going strong, it's really worth it. It's near Stonehenge. It's amazing. To me, apart from those standing centres, it's all about this. Stems that, when they're flattened, you've got standing stems here, and you've got flattened stems here. There's a contrast really often, and I feel like I've seen it more and more. Those stems, when they're right by the side of the standing stems, they haven't actually been flattened. It's so gentle that they're just caught up on the standing crop, and that's what you're looking at here. They're just caught up. They haven't been flattened and then sprung back up. They just haven't really been flattened at all, because the process or the energy that's creating them is so gentle. They're not forced to the ground. So they've got a few images of the same thing. That crop circle at Normanton Down is all about this. It's all about it. So there's the standing stems, there are the ones resting against it. From inside, that's what it looks like. It's just something. And it's so intricate. I'm speeding through. Here's the bit where there's some stems flowing that way, clockwise, anti-clockwise actually, because it sort of goes this way, and this is clockwise, so you have that one band which points directly east to west, just that part. Don't know why, but we look for anomalies. Here's some lovely intricate area of the corner as the stems flow around. I'm on a countdown, 50 seconds, so I'm going to time it just right. There it is. What a beautiful thing. Standing centre, standing centre, standing centre, standing centre. Here, there's all sorts of geometry. You can imagine it. It's amazing. Same again. So, I haven't seen loads of crop circles in 2024, but that's a beauty and you should go there. I want to say this. Steve Alexander has taken thousands and thousands of amazing aerial photos. Those are shared in my book, many of them, to illustrate what I'm talking about. And so I want to have a little moment of tribute to Steve. He's still out there in his helicopter. Yeah, well, I think it should be around the world. And then I needn't rush over this. I know my time's up right now. But Andy has written the foreword to my book, which is I'm doing it on purpose, but it's the full circle of 1995, 2003, running up the field with you, and then I put the book together. It's my life's work, and Andy has some contribution to that. So, Andy, the honour is mine in that. I don't think this video is going to work, so if I can make it work, it's funny. If I can't, it's nothing. Will it? No. It's supposed to be when they used to think like hedgehogs, rutting hedgehogs made crop circles and that sort of thing. Well, if only that worked, it'd be a video of my baby boy once crawling up and alas, we have to end there. But please buy a book. It'd be amazing if you bought it. I can sign it. I'll sign as many as you like. And walking the tram line's not in the standing crop. And thanks to Andy. And thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dan Vidler.